Yes? Yes? Okay. So I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is a special meeting of the Pioneer Valley Regional School District School Committee. This is March 28th, 2019. I want to remind everyone that this meeting is being recorded by Bernardston-Northfield Community Television for future broadcast on your local cable channel. This meeting may also be streamed live on their Facebook page when able. Okay. First thing on our agenda is citizens' comments. I want people to be sure that they state their name clearly for our secretary. And I know there are many people that have already addressed the committee. I don't know how many people want to address the committee tonight. But if you have already addressed the committee in writing or in person, I would request that you consider letting people that haven't already done so address the committee. We have 3 minutes for each person speaking. And let's begin.
Good evening. Lois and I are here representing the select boards and the finance committees of the 4 towns. Most residents of Bernardston, Leiden, Northfield, and Warwick are aware that the select boards and the finance committees have determined to meet as a body at least every 3 months for the purpose of finding common goals and examining in what areas we can work together in sharing services, jobs, opportunities not only to better our communities but also to share costs. We held our 3rd meeting on March 18th, 2019, at which time the following was voted without dissent. Recommendations for the current assessments will be made at town meetings with the following proviso. Should one or more of the PVRS schools be closed, the savings from that closures will be given back to the towns directly through their assessments and will not be utilized by PVRS. Another topic discussed with great concern and dismay was a contract executed between the PVRS School Committee and the superintendent. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have that in writing. I'll pass each side.
Hello, my name's Robin Knipe. I'm the community representative for the Leiden local school council. And we had a meeting with the Bernardston School Council on Monday night. And we took a vote, and in the interest of doing what's best for the entire district, this was the motion that was made and voted on and passed. The Bernardston Elementary School, oh, you want to say who you are?
Oh, I'm Tracy Soboleski from, I'm a Bernardston parent and a school council representative.
The Bernardston Elementary School and the Pearl Roads Elementary School Councils voted to recommend that the Pioneer Valley Regional School District Committee that votes be taken now to close the Pearl Roads Elementary School and the Warwick Community School. The councils also request that any funds that are saved in school closures remain in the district and be used to maintain the present level of support systems in our classrooms provided by instructional assistants. Lastly, we request a yes or a no vote on the move of 6th grade students to PVRS.
My name is Dan Dibble, pastor of the church in Warwick and a member of the Education Task Force in Warwick. I just have some brief comments. Community organizing approach, a community organizing approach called asset-based community development has 3 main points. First, you inventory all the assets available within the community without judgment, which means that everything in the community, every member, is a potential asset. 2, are these assets being used to their full potential? 3, how could they be reconfigured to form a greater aggregate effectiveness for the whole community? From all appearances, this committee considers the Warwick Community School not as an asset, but as a deficit. If all you look at is the financial spreadsheets we've all been given over the past few months, that seems reasonable and is probably why so few members came to Warwick for the so-called community forum this winter. How many of you have been to the Warwick Community School? So you are aware that the school itself is in good condition. The school building is probably the best physical asset the district has. It is new, clean, energy efficient, and has space for expansion. If you close it, what are the options if the Moody Center and Thomas Aquinas students and staff come into the community and bring children with them? The Northfield facility will be stretched to its limits and perhaps beyond. The school building is not the only asset the community should be considering. Under the asset-based community development approach, community members are counted as an asset. The Warwick community is, or could be, a great asset to the Pioneer Valley Regional School District. We have been able to convince the state to fund a building project that they otherwise considered too small. This took persistent effort on the part of a number of volunteers, but we were successful. Once the state signed on, a group of volunteers coordinated a successful fundraising effort to add a gym to the project. Again, persistent effort on the part of a great number of volunteers. The Warwick Building and Energy Committee worked with the Northfield Energy Committee to successfully propose a Green Communities grant that covered not just one town, as usual, but brought funding to increase the energy efficiency of 3 district buildings, thereby reducing operating costs to the district. The first such approach in the entire state. Again, persistent effort on the part of a number of volunteers. The community has also developed a town broadband service after the state program failed us. The community funded and built a new fire and rescue station. During the past few months,
Dan, I need to ask you to finish up.
Group has met to review the figures, and we have had these addressed and some adjustments made. The committee apparently sees this as obstructionist. Work with us for the next year, and we may come up with some ideas that you have not looked at. So we have the Warwick Community School seen as a deficit, the community as an obstructionist, when both could be seen as assets, if you had but eyes to see and ears to hear.
Thank you, Dan.
Good evening. My name is Gretchen Kelton. I'm a resident of Bernardston, and I am the legal guardian of a child who goes to Bernardston Elementary School. This is Adrian. He's a 5-year-old in Mrs. Keir's kindergarten class. He is smart, funny, thoughtful, inquisitive, imaginative, athletic. He's a joy to be around. He's always thinking. He wakes up in the middle of the night trying to figure things out, such as, why don't worms have faces? He questions everything and tries to come to a solution in his mind. When I put him on the bus in the morning, his bus driver, Cindy, says, "There's my happy boy." And I'm told that every day when he gets off the bus at school, by many faculty, he's always smiling. He loves school. He loves to learn. Adrian also struggles severely with childhood trauma. He upsets easily, he frustrates easily, he's unable to complete tasks, he's unable to self-regulate. And that happens daily, sometimes several times each day. Mrs. Keir and her instructional assistants work incredibly hard to help control and regulate him and not take extra time away from the other students in the class who are there to learn. Adrian has to regularly leave the classroom for body breaks, to do some exercising, other things in the classroom, reading alone, stretching, playing in a corner by himself. The instructional assistants offer him one-on-one support so that Mrs. Keir can continue her lessons. They help with transitions throughout the day, whether it just be from one lesson to the other, from one classroom to the other, dressing, undressing to go outside, preparing for lunch, preparing to return from lunch. From my perspective and all of the support that I've received from this classroom and the instructional assistants, without them, children like Adrian will suffer. Adrian will suffer, and all of the students will suffer because they will have delayed instruction daily. What I've seen from Mrs. Keir and her instructional assistants and the rest of the people in the school supporting is that in the last few months, Adrian comes home and he says, I got really upset at school today, but I stopped and I took a deep breath and I made a different decision. They are making a huge difference. Mrs. Keir can't do it alone. The rest of the teachers can't do it alone. And I ask you to please consider keeping all instructional assistants. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Doc Prine. I'm chair of the board of selectmen in Warwick. And I just wanted to come to share a few figures that haven't been spread around much and may work to explode the myth that it would be good for the district to close Warwick School. Last year, or should I say this year, Warwick paid $802,000 toward the levy. They fielded 55 kids, K through 12. You divide 802,000 by 55, you come up with $14,582. Now, we're not talking about all we send to the district, just the people we send, the kids we send to Warwick Community School. That's 33 kids this year. 33 kids times $14,582 is $480,000, roughly. That's what we paid out of pocket to run our school. Tanya, can you tell me what the operating budget for Warwick was this year?
For FY19?
18.
We're in 19.
19.
I do have that in front of me, actually.
Well, I know what it was last year. Last year I was told it was $682,000.
FY19 is 653.79.
653, so roughly the same. Okay, so since I know 652, I'll use that. Well, we sent $480,000 for the kids in our town to go to our school. Take that off of the 652, and you have $172,000 left. However, we also earned $12,000 for pre-K registrations. Minus that, you have $160,000 left. But our school attracted 27 school choice kids, $135,000. And I would repeat what Rick Kingsley said at the four-town meeting 6 weeks ago. He said, at this point, school choice is your only source of income. And I appreciated that he used the word income, because that's not how it's viewed around here. But with the income I just described, there's $160,000 left uncovered for the operating budget, minus $135,000 for the school choice that we've attracted. Uncovered, $25,000 left from our operating budget. $25,000.
Doc, I need to ask you to finish up.
Pardon me?
Please finish up.
Okay. Well, the last point I would make is that our 33 students also attract $5,000 apiece in Chapter 70 school aid, which is $165,000. So that means there's $140,000 left just from income coming in to cover personnel expenses. I don't know what
Thank
you
you,
should
Doc.
make about this, but I just thought that those figures should be in your mind before you decide whether you should close our school and have justification to do that.
Thank you.
My name is Bob Parquette. I'm a fairly new resident to Warwick. I live at 80 White Road. Previously, I lived in Hardwick for 20 years and 13 years in Petersham. I'm a real estate broker. Have been so for 30 years. And basically, it all comes down to the money, doesn't it? In other words, the reason that you are in the advisory capacity that you are is to figure out the best way to spend the dollars that you're given for the purpose of education. But there's a couple of other things that are pretty important here. Number one, if you go ahead and close Warwick or anybody else's schools, that is a devastating blow to the town. In other words, how am I going to tell people what a great community Warwick is when they don't even have a school? I understand that you're wrestling with money problems. That's why you're here. But that doesn't mean that it also means that there are good ways to handle this and not. If you want to deal a very significant death blow to your community, then go ahead and close the school. There's a second point here also. The lifeblood of any community is families. And so how do I, as a real estate broker, recommend to a family with 2 or 3 kids that they move to Warwick or any other town that has closed their school when they don't even have a school in town?
Please finish up, Bob.
Okay. So I'd just like you to think about those additional points. I understand you're wrestling with some very difficult problems. The fact that there's no easy answer, you knew that heading in here. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Diana?
Good evening. My name is Diana Noble. I'm a resident of Warwick and chair of the brand new Finance Committee there. I'm going to try very hard not to say any of the things I've already said. We've had many discussions. You've listened to a lot of feedback over the last couple of weeks and couple of months, and I appreciate your attention to that. I'm here to ask that you recognize that going back years ago, we have a district because we were all better together. We formed a district. I wasn't here at the time, but the towns formed a district because we were better together. I implore you, despite how exhausted you must be, to really consider some of the perspectives you're hearing tonight and that you've heard from other residents, even the ones you may not necessarily agree with, and take those into account. Dan Dibble has talked about many of the contributions that Warwick folks have had and the community of Warwick has had to this district. And I think that certainly if the Warwick School is closed, all of my other opinions aside, that there will be a trust issue at that point, and there will be a break in the trust between the larger community of the district and the smaller community of Warwick. I want to reiterate that there are 2 committees that have had an amazing amount of discussion and agreement among the 4 towns. Given our different perspectives, this is an amazing thing, and I also ask that you respect that. One is the unanimous vote we took a few weeks ago between the joint 4-town committees, the FinComs and the Select Board, and agreed that we would speak as one voice, recommending that any savings created tonight by a change goes back to the towns through the assessments. I voted for that because I don't think you have yet had a chance to look forward 3 or 4 years into the future on the impact and the risks and some of the scary budgets that are coming up to us. So I don't think that you or we or anybody is ready to predict what a permanent closing of a school would do to a school budget 3 years from now. So send those back to the towns. Let us make good use of it, and we'll talk again for next year. And lastly, I just ask, if you're not sure tonight, please vote to leave the schools open. I support the budget you worked so hard to vote on already. Of course, I don't like all of it, but I can support it and I can respect it. And I think everybody worked very hard to get to that point. Thank you.
Thank you. Janice?
Janice Starmer. I'm from Warwick. I served on both school committees, the local one and the school committee at one time. I know the challenges you're facing. As I look at the handouts tonight, I wonder why you haven't considered sending Northfield students to the Warwick school. The Warwick school is a beautiful school. It's really well suited, especially for young children. And it would seem that when I look at the class sizes and when I think about the condition of the building in Northfield, that it would really make sense for Northfield to send some of their students, maybe the early H1s or whatever, to Warwick. They would benefit from a fantastic staff and a fantastic building. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, looks like that's the end of citizens' comments. Thank you, everybody, for your feedback to the committee. I'm going to move on to number 2, which is discussion and vote on Pearl Roads Elementary School closure. Tanya has some documents to share.
So if you can pass this way. So I only made an extra 30 copies, so there's a lot more people here than that. But I do have the updated budget projection with the updated numbers for the closures on both of the schools, as well as a projection out to FY23 that the residents are looking for, so they can see what that impact of the school closures would be out to FY23.
All the same, or?
Thanks, Ben.
So I'm going to have Tanya take a minute and orient us to the document that she just sent out, because it has updated figures on it.
So the first one that has the scenarios on it, most of you that have come to the meetings, budget meetings, etc. so far have seen this. On the far right is the budget that has already been voted by the school committee at this point in time of $14,272,210.
Tanya, just slow down. Let's make sure we're all looking at the same document. So the scenarios, the heading on the top of the page says Leiden/Warwick scenarios.
Well, it says scenarios, and then it's got different.
Yeah.
So the far right column is the admin FY20 recommended. The column next to it shows one school closing, and 2 columns over shows both schools closing, and you'll notice those numbers have been updated with the figures that we have come to as far as the savings on those schools. The reason those numbers were updated is the numbers the consultants presented us with were based on the FY19 budget. We obviously had some savings in some items in the FY20 budget from the FY19. Some costs went up, so we wanted to make sure that we were presenting accurate data as far as that went. So those numbers are updated. In addition, I have taken the 5-year projection that the consultants originally did that they called their baseline. I updated that with our FY20 budget that we are at right now, as well as what FY21, 22, and 23 will look like based on knowing more about all of our line items, going through the budget process and what those really do go up every year, as well as what salaries truly go up every year with step increases and cost of living increases. So I did a very in-depth look at every line item and what those really are going to go up over the next few years to come up with this new projection for the next 4 years to FY23. And if you look at the bottom numbers where it shows the Leiden and Warwick closures, those numbers are increased conservatively at 2.5% per year. Most of our expenses increase roughly 2.5% per year, but depending on whether a teacher is at the top step or not, could increase upwards of 5.5% a year. So those numbers of savings are conservative in the years moving forward.
Sorry, Mike.
Can't hear you.
Yeah, keep talking. He'll get you on the. Just keep talking.
Testing?
Oh, there you
go. Okay. Tanya, could you just explain what these numbers represent? Are they baseline numbers, and is there potentially more savings in the following, this following fall if things change?
So this doesn't seem like it's on. So the numbers that I presented for each of the schools started with the information that the consultants got for us, and we took a look at some of the things that they might have missed, like the health insurance that goes along with the staff that are part of the savings, as well as the unemployment cost and Medicare costs that are associated with those salaries as well. So those have been updated in here. We did take into account if there was multiple positions, we took the lowest position to be conservative. So there are additional potential savings. These savings are as conservative as we could be, taking the lowest salaries that could potentially be involved. And then as far as the scenarios moving forward for the next 4 years, like I mentioned, they're very conservative with 2.5% increases in those savings, because all of those expenses would continue to increase at least 2.5% a year, and salary related expenses upwards of 5.5% a year with step increases and cost of living increases in the union contracts. So the forward looking savings that we would have over the next 4 years and obviously into the future, because these would be permanent savings, would continue to increase because we wouldn't be seeing the increases in those expenses if we weren't paying them.
Thank you.
Jess.
I have a question about the savings numbers on there for Leiden and Warwick. It looks like Leiden came down about the amount of change that was voted through between the initial FY20 budget and the administrative FY20 budget. Sorry, that's too close to me. And the Warwick number came down about $12,000, but there is $66,000 worth of cuts to the Warwick staff.
So these numbers are based on the line items involved in the original consultant's estimates. The only thing that we did was updated them to the current year's numbers for FY20, because FY19 numbers were used in the original projections, but there were changes in Warwick, such as making the principal a stipend position. So there are notes on here that say what it used to be if there were changes in the FY20 budget that were significant.
I guess I don't understand how it's a $12,000 change, but that's a $30,000 change.
Because some of the cost increased as well.
Yeah, I can't
Sorry.
hear you, Jess. And, you know, when we refer to a different paper, it would be good to know what we're all referring to. Because you're looking at one thing and I can see Tanya looking at another, so.
So as far as the savings for Warwick, what are you comparing? What the savings were before and what the savings are now for Warwick versus what was being presented previously?
Yeah.
So the increase is due to the fact that union contracts and salaries increase, as well as some of the other expenditures, and it's offset by the savings in some of the other lines, such as the principal salaries. But things that weren't taken into consideration originally were the Medicare and unemployment, and also the Title I monies that would be able to be used to serve Title I teachers or in the early childhood in another school.
Okay, I think it's really hard to use a document this complex that we haven't seen before in a meeting where we're making such an important decision. So I'm just going to acknowledge that. It's tricky.
I will say that you guys have seen this, it's just updated with the new
Yeah,
numbers.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I just didn't want decisions being made on numbers that were based on a budget that is for this current year when we're talking about making cuts for next year's budget.
Jeannie?
But we should have had the updated numbers more than as we're voting. We should have had them at least 2 days ago to go over them.
So you guys received these particular ones?
Right,
So
but
those
we-
numbers were updated?
But these are the ones with all the numbers on them, Tanya, that we just are seeing for the first
Because
time.
we just updated this, and this was a very intricate process of going through every single line item of the budget and adjusting those percentages. So I
David?
apologize.
David?
Yeah, I agree with Jeannie. I don't like seeing stuff for the first time at the meeting, but I'm trying to make sense of what Warwick Select Board Chairman. Sorry. I'm trying to make sense of what Warwick Select
You have to
Board-
really get to it. Yeah.
I'm trying to make sense
There you go.
of what Warwick Select Board Chair has alleged, and I can see that accounting left out any contribution to administration, to central office, and it didn't pick up any of the costs of special needs. So now, what I can't remember, and I don't know the answer to this, is where do we recognize health insurance, which is a $2-3 million expense? Is that in shared, or is that allocated by campus?
That's in our central office, and when I calculated the per student, that was allocated equally to every student across the district.
All right, but I was looking at a central office line that was about $600,000. That's not enough to pay our insurance bill, even half of it.
So, unfortunately, having not been part of the budget process this year, we have voted these line items separately, and insurance and benefits is its own line item now if you look at the spreadsheet.
Mike?
So I'm just trying to figure out.
Madam
has
Chair,
insurance been picked
Madam
up in
Chair,
Warwick's budget?
Madam Chair, you're recognizing me? We're on number 2, discussion and vote in Pearl Roads Elementary. I'd like to move to close the Pearl Roads Elementary School located in Leiden, Mass. Effective June 30th, 2019, and to no longer utilize the building for the purpose of providing education to the district students as of said date, subject to the Commissioner of Elementary and Secondary Education's approval.
So moved, or second.
Discussion? Abby?
So looking at the Leiden numbers, and I have similar questions for the Warwick numbers, so if they answer now, I want to ask them again later. At the forum that was held at Pearl Roads, some of these positions, I think specifically special needs teacher, that was someone, that salary, or I guess she was going to be taking over for someone who is retiring elsewhere in the district. So there, and I guess also with the custodial salary, and I'm looking at the Leiden savings based on FY20 budget. Sorry, I didn't say that first. Those are, I guess, let's start with special needs teacher. Since we'll still be paying retirement for whoever she's taking over for. First, is that still what I understand, that?
So if she's taking over for somebody else's position that's already budgeted, it's still a savings because we would not be paying 2 salaries, we would be paying 1.
But wouldn't it be a smaller savings because we'd be paying that person's retirement?
So the retirement is not something that we pay directly. It's part of our annual pension contribution, which is in our insurance and benefits line.
Okay,
So it's, and we contribute to that throughout their employment at the district. So we don't directly pay
Okay.
retirement pensions from our budget.
Sorry, let me look at, The other question was of the custodial salary, which is a question I have for, well, I guess no, you answered that for the Warwick one. It says here in parentheses, need extra help at NES, and then because the school is not being 100% cleaned. Is that an added position, or is that?
No. So the custodian that's at Pearl Roads in Northfield right now is currently split between the two schools,
Okay.
and Northfield has been in need, desperate need, from what I understand, of additional hours of custodial, but due to our budget constraints, we have not been able to provide that up to this point in time. And because this person is a full-time person working at the school district, rather than give them less hours or look for somebody part-time, it has been discussed with the facilities director that the hours that are done at Pearl Roads would be moved over to Northfield to fill the need there.
So that then would become a full-time position.
So instead of a
there,
$10,000 savings that was originally done,
Right.
rather than adding to our budget or trying to find somebody else, we would add those hours to Northfield.
Okay, thank you.
So the person wouldn't leave or lose hours.
Yep, okay. Those are my questions there. I mean, I guess if.
Go ahead, yeah.
I mean, the only other thing I would say is, I mean, I have very mixed feelings, obviously, about especially Pearl Roads, because my daughter does go there, and I'm trying to take the personal side out of that. But looking at the model we have there versus the model at Bernardston, and both models are great. All of our schools are excellent and provide an excellent education. I'm not disputing that. The different models with the combined classrooms versus single classrooms, I know for my family and a lot of the other families I know at Pearl Roads, that is instrumental in their student success. And I worry about losing that identity and that benefit to the community by closing the school. And I guess I really want us to be sure of the educational model we're trying to pursue as we move forward and make this a big picture thing. Is this, we're going to get these savings now, looking at the numbers on the 4-year projection, it looks like we're going to be in a deficit again in a year or two. And where do we then go from there? Are we looking at closing more schools and in this position again? Or are we able to save money other ways?
Mike?
Well, if you got to look at what we've cut already to try to maintain, and we understand where the towns are coming from. We understand where the parents are coming from to put the IAs back. Now, there's got to be a happy medium, and we're not going to be able to do it by keeping the schools open. We know that. As you said, they're possibly going to be deficit, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. The numbers say that. But now if we don't close the schools, it's going to be worse. And where are we cutting next? We just cut $555,000 out of the budget. And if we can do something to help offset that until we can get to where we need to be, I think closing the schools is going to be the right thing to do. It's just, there's no money available coming from anywhere. John's working hard to get some supplemental income coming in, but that's not going to be recognized until the following year. So we need to get through this, but we can't, we're not going to please everybody. I would like to see the schools get closed and return some of that investment back to the IA lines, or what's needed, as the administration says. It's what is needed. Some classes might need something, some classes might not. But we all recognize that there is a need in some of these classes, and we can't help all the kids in the district unless we do the right thing. It's going to be a hard choice to do this, but I think it's the right thing.
Jeannie?
One of my questions is, neither of these projections on combined show what the special needs students are for either Bernardston or Northfield, with or without, or showing Pearl Roads or Warwick community. What is the impact of the special needs students coming from each of the smaller schools to the larger school? We need to see a reflection, and that has to be all part of the consideration too.
So all the special needs students have been considered, and I worked closely with the special ed director to go through student by student and school by school and classroom by classroom to make sure all those students, you know, their needs are continued to be met.
So we're saying the special needs students are incorporated with the sizes of the classrooms projected here?
Yes, correct.
David?
I like that question. I'd like to follow up. If we consolidate, operate on fewer campuses, are there any economies of scale? Are there any savings, or do we just transfer the service delivery from one place to another at pretty much the same cost where it comes to special needs?
So the costs have all been factored in. So some of the students that would come down or move up, let's say from 6th grade to 7th grade at Pioneer, some of those students may be able to be serviced by a special needs teacher here. And some of those students have a one-to-one as their IEP mandates. So we factored that all in. So that's all part of this calculation as far as the numbers in the classrooms and the figures on the sheet.
The personnel have been considered in the models, working with the consultants and the that wasn't.
My question has to do with the efficiency. There's the idea that Pioneer would be more efficient if everything happened under one roof. So I'm trying to drill down to, does that affect obtain in special needs? Is it more expensive to deliver special needs at 4 sites than 3 or than 2? Or did the model assume that it's pretty much the same cost? Because we got to do the same thing, and the one-on-one kid needs the same one-on-one. But is there any efficiency to closing the school? I'm looking.
Right. There's some efficiencies as far as like maybe a speech and language person not having to drive to that school, 20 minutes each way. It could be. I guess the answer would be there are some efficiencies that could be made depending on the school, but it's not. This is all calculated, so it's not like it wouldn't be a significant number if it was all housed under one roof as far as the potential savings versus the 4. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Sharon.
I have 3 things to say. First of all, my children went to Pearl Roads Elementary School, and I have a granddaughter there. And it pains me to have to close it, but I also see these numbers, and I see we need to be sustainable, and we are not going to be unless we close the school. We've done a great job over the years. The towns have done a good job supporting us. All 4 towns. We've turned out some wonderful students out into the community. They're great citizens. We've done a good job. But now I think it's time to close the doors at Pearl Roads Elementary.
Jeannie?
One of my concerns clearly is about my own town, and I've heard from many parents that are very upset at the cuts in IAs for the elementary school in Bernardston. And I'm very cautious about the effect of bringing Pearl Road students in, how that is going to affect, because I don't see any instructional assistants being added for the Bernardston Elementary School if there is if Pearl Roads and Bernardston are combined. And I don't want my town's children shortchanged because of budgets or whatever.
So if the students at Pearl Roads have a one-to-one or have an assistant, they would come with that student.
So you're saying if you have one assistant for 3 students at Pearl Roads, that assistant is going to go to Bernardston?
If it's required by the IEP, yes, they would. It's like a one-to-one assistant for a child that maybe has an IEP. They would follow that child.
There's no IAs on this sheet. There's teachers, but there are no IAs.
Can I clarify that?
Mike?
The clarification on this, I think we're looking at 2 different things. We're looking at IAs that are there to assist the teacher with a classroom that has a need, but they're not considered a one-on-one. A one-on-one is required, okay? A medical is required. What we're looking at, we can't put back IAs unless we have the funds to do it, and you can't do that with keeping the 4 schools open. So if this goes through and there's funds available, I know the towns would like to see it all come back to them, but in reality, when you save some funds, you've got to put some back into the education of the kids.
Mike, you're talking to me like I don't know what I'm talking about. I know please, hear me out. I know very much about 504s for medical needs and IEPs and instructional aids and one-on-ones. And there's clearly a difference among all 4. And my concern is that instructional assistants have been cut, and we're increasing the size of the classrooms in Bernardston, but no instructional assistants are being added.
That's my point. How do we bring them back without making the savings
So
in certain locations?
I'm going to let Tanya speak.
So Jeannie, if you look at the documentation you were provided on Leiden savings, you'll notice that the classroom IA at Pearl Roads was originally part of the savings for $18,507, and John and myself have made that 0 because we recognize the fact that we did cut IAs at Bernardston, and by bringing more students over, there's going to be a need for aides, whether it's an aide that's shared amongst multiple classes or in a particular class. So this was our effort to add an IA back. So it is in the documentation that you have.
Which is great, but I wish that was reflected on this sheet too, where the teaching positions are spelled out. Thank you.
Karen.
Hello. I'd like to echo some of my colleague from Leiden, Sharon Fontaine's comments. My daughter as well went to Pearl Roads. In fact, here's a picture of her pre-K class. And she was at that school through grade 4. So in that class, there have been 2 graduates of military academies. And there's no doubt that smaller is better when it comes to really knowing each individual student and devising ways to meet his or her unique needs. There are also invaluable benefits derived from a school community which extend to the entire community, and we've heard a lot about that tonight. However, I realize, as Sharon does, that if the school district, its philosophy, its mission to help every student succeed is to regain its financial health, we must be able to make difficult decisions. I believe it is in the best interests of the district as a whole to close Pearl Roads Elementary School and send the school students to Bernardston Elementary School. This is a personally painful position for me. I've read widely about small towns which close their only school. Those that survive as communities recommit to being communities. Residents connect and reconnect, organize, volunteer, create and maintain a town identity, and they provide hometown activities for their young people. Leiden residents will be challenged to do this, and we must answer that call. I am going to vote to close Pearl Roads Elementary School. but also yes to Pioneer Valley Regional School District's survival, and yes to keeping Leiden a viable community for people of all ages. Thank you.
Yeah, Abby.
One other question. On the Leiden savings based on the FY20 budget in Warwick, on these pages I don't see anything about the proposed payments or however we're handling it to the towns that would be losing their schools, which would decrease the savings. Do we have an idea about that?
So those discussions will be had by the budget subcommittee as well as the school committee in revising the budget once these votes would be made. Unfortunately, those discussions have to be had by the school committee and the budget subcommittee as to whether or not those payments would be made and how those will be handled. As we know, those were things that were put into the regional agreement that is being proposed. However, that has not been yet discussed by the school committee or voted on, so those wouldn't be applicable at this time. So that would have to be an individual decision of the school committee when the budget committee proposes that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Robin?
Hi.
You gotta eat it.
Yeah, really up to you.
Okay. Is this working now? I don't think I turned it on.
Oh, there you go.
Okay. I'm just looking at these projected numbers for the Bernardston Elementary School. Should the Pearl Road students be bused down there? And I'm just curious how the decision was made that a class of 26 second graders would not require a second teacher, when I know that we already have broken up classes of like 24 students of the same age at other schools in the district.
So the administration, we looked at the classrooms, and this, again, is the IAs or the classroom assistants or the one-to-ones aren't on the sheet, but that was all factored in as part of these numbers. So I think that the numbers you were referring to before was a kindergarten class, maybe of 20, 24, or 25 students that was split at one point early in the year.
I'm referring to a first grade class.
Second grade class of 26.
So a projected second grade class of 26 at Bernardston as compared to a third grade class of 22 at Northfield that is in fact 2 classes. I just am curious why the class sizes
Yeah, I guess it depends on the dynamic of the classroom, the students, what assistance would be in that classroom. That was all factored in.
Okay. I was just curious why the class sizes were so much higher, projected to be so much higher at Bernardston.
They're not.
It really comes down to, the makeup of the classroom, the students, the IAs, the assistants that would be coming in that class or with those students. So that was all factored into these numbers. It's just not broken down on this sheet, but we did break it down on the public hearing on that PowerPoint by position, by school, and went through all that at that point.
Jeannie.
I believe those same questions will come up at the town meeting about the class size and one teacher.
So, like my colleagues, I've been thinking about this and reading about this and struggling with this for a long time. My skill set is through academics, so I have looked through the academic records and tried to find research to guide us. Research that I hoped would be impartial and not done by people who have a particular bias. And that research is almost non-existent. So, one of the things I did glean from all that reading was that home values tend to be influenced by the success of the school that the children go to, that they correlate in our current day and age changes in test scores to changes in home values in some of the research. Not how far away your school is or how many students are in it, but the quality of the school. The other thing that I've realized is that we are in the midst of something that's happening across our country. Rural America is struggling everywhere in the United States, and schools are being closed and communities are struggling. And there was a recent article in the New York Times where some very, very skilled economists were working on this, and they basically ended the article saying, we don't know what to do. So I think all of us are going to have to work with our senators and legislators to try to help our communities. You know, we have a change in our structure as a country where people can't make a living in our rural communities, and so they're not moving there. So that's a big problem for all of us. So it has a larger context than here. Do people feel ready to, David?
No.
Okay. Do people feel ready to vote?
Yep.
Want to conclude discussion? Okay. So the motion was made by Mike. Do we need to hear it again, or are we good?
No. Good.
Okay. So the motion was to close Pearl Roads. So all those in favor of closing Pearl Roads Elementary School, please raise your hand. Okay, thank you, everybody. All those opposed to closing Pearl Roads Elementary School, please raise your hand. Anyone abstaining? Okay. All right, I'm going to move us on to number 3. Discussion and vote on Warwick Community School closure. And you want to read out the results of the vote?
Opposed to the vote were Jim Bell, Abby Pratt, and Jessica Marshall. All the rest were in favor.
What were the numbers? 8-3. 8-3?
Yeah.
Please don't call out from the audience. All right, so discussion on the vote of Warwick Community School closure. Sharon?
I'd like to make a motion, right?
Yeah. Do you need the
I
language?
move to close the Warwick Community School located in Warwick, Mass., effective June 30th, 2019, and to no longer utilize the building for purpose of providing education to the district's students as of said date, subject to the Commissioners of Elementary and Secondary Education's approval.
I'll second that motion.
Discussion. Jim?
So just thinking about school closure in general, but I'm trying to look at a bigger picture, especially when it comes to Warwick. Reading in the newspaper that the Orange school system, especially elementary, is troubled, and how much, how many students can we attract into the Pioneer School District through Warwick from Orange, just trying to throw that out.
Did you want to speak? Mike?
Regarding Warwick and Orange, I understand that there's, the 27 school choicers, I believe it's 27. Kids come to Warwick, but there is a cost to that. I realize it's $5,000 per kid that comes, but it costs us more than that to educate them. And I know there's different ways to looking at the budget process at the town of Warwick and how they're trying to come up with the figures that they've done. But with that being said, what we're trying to do here is be sustainable for the whole district and all the kids in the district. Leiden residents in this council that met last week, they can see where the benefits are. I would like to hope that Warwick can see that, depending on how the vote comes to fruition tonight. But we can't do it with just one school closing. We need both of these schools closed to see substantial savings to provide IAs or anything else that is needed in our classrooms to provide a quality education. The classrooms that need additional assistance should get it. We should not give the towns all of the money back. That is the wrong message to send. We're a team throughout all the towns in this community and district, and one side can't get all of the money. It just makes no sense. So if we can move to close Warwick and provide the funding in the places that are needed, IAs or anywhere else, then that should be done.
David?
When I came on this committee 3 elections ago, I saw this coming, and I irritated a lot of people saying so endlessly. But here's what I see now. It's not in the interest of this district to close Warwick Community School. And the reason is that the district has a problem that is fundamentally due to its tiny size. And if we close Warwick School, Warwick will leave this district. And we will be 10% smaller. And we will be without a very nice building and a very competent staff and a great educational experience. I know that Warwick is talking to Mahar right now, not about fishing them and getting school choice students, but in terms of maybe joining in a supervisory union or doing something. So this district wants to continue to exist. I'm not sure it has any right to over time, but we may decide we want to be aggressively small. I don't think that we will succeed by casting off our best building and seeing 10% of the population vacate the Pioneer District.
Kristen?
I think it's important that we remember that within our district, we have amazing faculty and staff that provide our children with the best education possible every day. And that instruction can happen outside of any building. It's the interactions, it's the staff working with the children. The education can be provided in any building. That is just what houses the interactions and the education that is delivered. So I think we really need to remember what's important when we're providing the education. It's not where the education is being provided, it's the type of interaction and quality of education we're delivering to all of the students.
Sharon?
Well, here again, we have a beautiful community school with some wonderful children and staff, parents. And it's come to a very difficult time where we really have to focus on the numbers. We can't sustain ourselves by keeping this school open. They've done a great job with the kids. They've done a great job with the budget this year, trying to pare it down, trying to meet the needs and of the budgetary deficits. But unfortunately, what's going to happen next year? If we give $200,000 to keep it open one more year just to see what happens, it's going to be disastrous for us, for the district. I can't support keeping the school open, unfortunately.
Jess?
So I kind of like to challenge the notion that there is no income revenue happening because this...
Jess, you gotta really, somehow your mic's not totally broadcasting you. Because you're speaking softly.
I'm speaking
it's
softly.
Okay. Yeah, it's hard to talk about it.
So there are things that are not reflected in this budget, but we know are part of what's going on in the community. There is the Green Communities Grant, which is paying for a great deal of weatherization and fuel efficiencies in the district. And there is choice money coming into Warwick Community School. I do hear this idea that the choice is not important to some people. This is a double-edged sword for most people about how do we calculate it and what do we do with it. I think we need to think about finding out if some of these choice families will continue to the high school if they're offered busing from the elementary schools that they have chosen to send their kids to. Part of our vision is about bringing kids into the district from other districts, and if we have struggling districts around that are already going to one of our schools, I feel like that is an unknown that could serve to increase our population in ways that we're talking about trying to what's happening in the town of Warwick is that a tremendous amount of energy and innovation and creativity is happening around revenue building. And I think that we need to encourage this in our entire district. I think that this is a model for how we should all be working together. And it goes to what you said, Karen, about we are all in charge of this. We are the district. We are making decisions sitting here at this table, but all of us in this room are this district. All of us here have ideas about being creative. All of us have ideas about what our kids need and what our towns need, and our towns are coming together. And I really think that as our district committee, what we need to be doing is gathering with them and gathering with each other to come up with what is a real 5-year vision that is sustainable fiscally and does not mean that we are just cutting everything out of our education. I think that this school is a model. I think that people are sending their children there for a reason, and it is a magnet school for the area, and it has a reason to survive.
Karen?
I have 2 reasons that I'm going to vote no for closing the Warwick School. Warwick Community School is in a different position than Pearl Roads is. They have a building which is fully ADA compliant and in need of less maintenance. They have a larger enrollment. They have a large contingent, as we've heard, of school choice students, which it presently can accommodate without added professional staff. And that's the major cost driver in a school. They have successful grant funding, which reduces utility costs at their school. And they have a community of all ages and backgrounds which sees itself as such, but also as a strong partner in this larger district. And the second reason is, and here I'm speaking as a person whose background is in science, closing an elementary school is an experiment of sorts for us. I want to see the data on both the financial and educational effects of one school closure before initiating a second school closure. The data should be able to tell us something about that by the time of the next budget cycle. And they should be able to tell us about how our budget is doing financially as a result of the one closure, and how our children are doing as a result of being sent to a school outside their town. That will help everyone make a decision on a second closure if that is indeed necessary. And that's all I have to say about that.
Robin.
Okay, I once again have a very boring question about numbers. At one point in the past, I had asked some administrators in the district about a K-8 model, because pedagogically, I happen to believe that that's the best model for students developmentally. And I was told that there was no way that Northfield could physically accommodate that number of classrooms. And I'm just wondering where the 4 classrooms that we are projecting could be accommodated now mysteriously came from.
I don't know, Megan, if you want to speak to this at all, or there is one classroom that's unused now, and there's or 2 classrooms that's unused now. I don't know if you want to elaborate a little bit.
About the other comment about K through 8, but based on the combinations of projected numbers of all students from Warwick coming to Northfield, we would have enough classrooms to accommodate them with some restructuring of some of our learning spaces.
Jess. I'm just checking. That's inclusive of the new special needs programming that's going on, slated to go on in Northfield.
Yes, that includes that.
And in Warwick, correct?
No.
There was not a program that was...
Okay. Jess.
I have one other comment, which is part of what we're not looking at is what happens if the school choice students do not go to Northfield. And I think we should have a conversation about that.
Mike?
With the schools, the way the numbers were in the past, say 10 years ago, I believe Bernardston was around 212 kids roughly. 228 years ago, and we're down to 156, 160? 163. Northfield, once over 300, and we're down to what? 88. I think there's enough room for the class sizes to be, to accept the kids from the schools.
Jess.
So I'm not really talking about whether the classes can hold them. I'm talking about what we're doing with staff and what the expectations are for the costs that would be incurred if there is not choice students there, what the classroom sizes, the number of students would be in those classes. And I guess I go back to an earlier question about...
assuming that all the school choice students would come.
Which we have to do.
We don't know
Yeah.
until it happens whether they're going to come or not come. They could tell us they're going to come and not come the last minute, or they could say they're not going to come.
And get closer to the
We
mic.
still have to factor that in. So we took all the school choice students into these calculations and factored them all come in. So correct, some of the classroom sizes, if they choose not to, might be a little smaller or change things, but we don't know.
So just a comment on the financial piece of that. I know
Get
that
really close.
the $135,000 for the school choice has been thrown in to the matter. However, if all 27 students don't come, there would be additional staff savings that would offset that school choice income, so it would not create a deficit on our budget. And that is just speaking strictly financial.
Abby.
I was going to say, on the projected combined classes, at least one of the ones that I have, because I have the old ones too, I think they're the same. At the top, it says enrollment combined, which has the whole student body. Under that, it says Warwick Community School Choice, and then the enrollment combined, which subtracts those numbers to give you an idea of the class sizes.
I think that's an old sheet.
Is that the old sheet?
Yeah.
Sorry.
There's
I've got
another
so many
sheet.
papers in front of me.
That happens.
I think the numbers are still accurate
I
though, but
think
we're
so, too,
presenting
yeah.
them all together because
Right.
we won't know until next year happens if the vote goes through what those numbers are going to be.
Jess?
I'm continuing on. I'm not assured that we're going to get the savings that we think we're going to get by making this decision. Some people may feel that way. I'm not convinced of that. And I'm wondering if we don't do that, where does that responsibility lie? What are we working with if we don't actually get this savings? This is an issue for people of the town whose school's been closed and are seeing a number that feels not significant enough to close the school, and the concern is that then we won't even see that. I think that we've heard that from the townspeople pretty clearly.
All right, I want to have a turn to speak. I've been thinking about this, of course, as we all have, and I do think that there are big differences between Leiden and Warwick, and I've gone back and forth because I feel like the combination of the building, the enrollment numbers, the capacity to serve needs in the community of Orange and other places are all things we can try to work toward increasing our sustainability over time. I've also watched the Warwick Community School adapt and shift and make accommodations to get through tight times. My concern is that even if we are voting to keep that school open tonight, we will be in this same exact place in a year, because it doesn't really solve the problem. I'm also thinking about the incredible advocate that we have in our new senator, and I think that she understands the challenges of rural education in a way that I don't know that they've been understood before. And I'm hoping that with her support, we can make some headway on rural education. Right now, I feel like the state's major approach to this is make bigger districts. And that's exactly opposite to providing rural aid to schools. And those two dynamics are currently at play. Well, we didn't get rural aid this year. And I would like to see our state work toward more of that. And I'd like to see our state value its rural elements more. And I'm hoping we can do that. And for that reason, I would like to give our school one more year, at least. Sharon.
I feel as though if we keep Warwick School open, we're not giving the rest of the children in our district the best possible education that we can provide for them with the monies that our towns are providing for us. I think it's a huge mistake to keep the school open because of that very reason. Keeping a school open for 33 of your own children, 33 of Warwick's children. We're closing a school in Leiden who has 33 students of their own. So you want to keep a school open and give them $200,000 because they have a lovely building. That doesn't make sense to me, to spend $200,000 and not give the rest of the children in our district a better opportunity.
David.
When we took the vote making an extra kindergarten class, I suggested, no, we should be moving kids from Northfield to Warwick, which has capacity. We should look at those opportunities or slots that we've declared are available for school choice and avail them to residents in Northfield. We could do some load balancing. I mean, if you look at when I look at where Bernardston is with the Leiden merger, I mean, on about 4 out of those classrooms, we hit the sweet spot that if we were running an airline, that's what we want. We want the seats filled, but we don't want to run an extra airplane to pick up 2 other customers and split them in half, and we lose money on both flights. Stay close to the mic, yep. So I really think part of keeping Warwick open is allowing children to attend Warwick from other towns within our district. And our current district agreement hasn't been totally abrogated, and it says that any parent can come to the school committee and ask for that. So we have a mechanism.
Jim?
Are we ready to vote?
Any more comment, discussion? Okay, the motion has been made. So this is a vote to close Warwick Community School. All those in favor of closing Warwick Community School, please raise your hand. And are you set? All those opposed, please raise your hand. Set. Any abstentions? Okay, Ann, can you tell us the results of the vote?
3 opposed. Sorry, 3 in favor of closing the school, 8 opposed.
3 in favor of closing the school and 8 opposed. All right, I'm going to move on to number 4. The vote on Pioneer Valley Regional Educational Association Memorandum of Understanding regarding additional co-curricular stipends. So there is a document in your packet that says Memorandum of Understanding at the top. Okay. So it doesn't appear that we have anyone from the association here to speak. So Tanya's going to speak to this for us.
I'd like to table it then.
So I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I had the conversations with Pioneer Valley's principal, and there were, due to staff members leaving, there were clubs that were not held in FY19 in the 2018-19 school year, and she requested that the monies that were budgeted for clubs be reallocated to clubs.
They're talking, I can't hear, so if they get
David
quiet
and
while there's a
Robin,
person talking.
can I please speak?
Thank
you. She asked for those items to be reallocated to clubs that were actually taking place that did not currently have a stipend associated with them, because she thought that was fair and equitable. So she took the money that was left, which was the $3,146 from the clubs that did not happen, and asked that they be reallocated to the Spanish Honor Society, GSA, a bike club, and a ping pong club that, as I mentioned, have been happening, but were not stipend as the other co-curricular things were stipend. However, this is just for the 18-19 school year. There are not monies in the budget for these items for next school year. So this is a one-time FY19 memorandum of understanding only that's being requested.
Jeannie?
I guess I'm a little disappointed that neither Miss LaRue nor any one of these 4 people could show up here tonight, and I would like to table this until our next meeting.
Second.
I move to table this until our next meeting.
It's been seconded. All those in favor of tabling this item until the next school committee meeting, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Good. Abstentions?
Right, Jim.
Okay. So that means we need to have a motion to actually approve the memorandum of understanding, right?
So moved.
Okay. So this is a vote to approve the memorandum. Oh, sorry, discussion. Thank you, David. Robin?
What happens to this money if it's not given out for these clubs that weren't put in for and budgeted for at the beginning of the year the way that clubs normally would be?
It would flow to our E&D at the end of the year, which currently, at this point in time, under our current legislation, we are not allowed to vote to use to offset our budget while we're under our current legislation, at least for the first 3 years. So it will be held and not be able to use for future years' education until we are out of the mess, I guess, if you want to call it that, out of the legislation and under the state's thumb that we're under currently.
David?
It's not much, but it's a start. It might be the first money that's been found that we didn't run off and spend immediately. It is time to say no to something, as small as this is. I urge you to vote no. Put the money to E&D.
Any more discussion? So as I understand it, this money is to give people a stipend for work they've already done during this school year?
They're doing clubs that aren't stipend, however, all of the other co-curricular stipends, or co-curricular clubs at the high school have a stipend under the teacher's contract currently. That's my understanding.
So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Robin?
So typically, there are clubs that are designated and budgeted for that are stipended. And then if a teacher volunteers to start a new club after the budget has been set, that's a out of the goodness of their own heart position. And then if the club kind of takes off, they put, their administrator requests that to go into the budget for the coming school year. Yes, people do these things out of the goodness of their heart, and that's how clubs are often started, but this stipend process is something that's requested and budgeted for, and people know that when they start a club that isn't on the list, that there's not money there for it.
So it's actually part of the teacher's contract that these are listed out, and this was a request from Pioneer's principal to have these done, not necessarily the individuals that are doing the clubs.
David?
A gift is not a loan. We don't owe anything here. A gift is not a loan.
So is it, am I clear in my thinking that there were stipends budgeted for that didn't end up happening? And then the school principal saw the need for certain clubs in the building and requested that faculty run those clubs?
I don't know.
No. Okay.
We're ready.
She just requested it.
So we have our Dean of Students here who may be able to clarify. Kathy, would you be willing to come up and speak at the mic? Thank you.
Sue, if you could just repeat the first part where you talked about money previously being allocated but then not used.
Yeah, is that true?
That's exactly what has been happening. The clubs
Okay.
that just got rattled off, the Spanish Honor Society, the Ping Pong Club, the Bike Club, and so on, they are not new. They have been going on for, some of them for 3 and 4 and 5 years.
Mhm.
And those individuals, the advisors, were never given a stipend. And so as the budget was being reviewed, as they were looking at how to spend the current money and so on, the principal made the recommendation that maybe it was time that those advisors, as in concert with their colleagues, also receive a stipend. Those people work as hard as anybody else, but they're not new clubs. They have been in existence for several years.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. David?
So related, I wonder, are these clubs in the current budget that the school committee passed?
They are not, and that's why I requested.
Well, isn't that interesting? So what will we be scrambling at in the middle, the beginning of, will we be scrambling to fund these? Because we will have established a basis for doing so. Please vote no, folks.
The memorandum is only for the 18-19 school year as stated at the bottom.
Yeah, it says it doesn't set a precedent. Jeannie?
It does set a precedent in the sense that we give them a stipend this year, it's not budgeted for next year, and they, you know, want to request the stipend again for next year, but yet it's not budgeted for.
Okay. Robin?
As corollary to that, did we continue to budget for these mysterious clubs that didn't spend the $3,000?
No, we have those from the budget.
Okay.
All right, are we ready to vote?
It is budgeted.
All right. So, the motion. Was there a motion?
Yeah, the motion was to
Honor the memorandum of agreement as proposed. And it was seconded?
Yes.
By, okay. Okay. So all those in favor of honoring this memorandum of understanding as it is presented in front of us, please raise your hand. Paying it.
It really should be approving.
Say it again.
Approving.
Approving the memorandum of understanding as presented.
It was specified for FY19 only.
Yes.
And let me know when you've got everybody. All those opposed? Abstentions? Six, and the motion carries. Thank you. Number 5. Discussion of Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education concerns regarding superintendent's contract and correspondence to Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education regarding these concerns and a potential vote. Mike? Mike?
I'd like to,
Can't hear you.
I'd like to see that a letter is sent to the division, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education regarding the concerns from boards that have sent letters to DESE and the commissioner. And I'd like to see that that letter gets sent and signed by all of us here at this table. Thank you.
Second, is that a motion?
Yes, that's a motion.
Second.
Discussion. Jessica?
Do you have a letter that you're working with?
We do have a letter.
Can we see the letters?
Would you like me to read the letter out loud?
Sure.
The letter states, "We, the aforementioned members of the PVRSD School Committee, sign this statement in support of Superintendent Jonathan's schedule concerning his contract for employment dated February 14th, 2019. On that date, the committee voted unanimously to approve Mr. Schedule's 5-year contract for employment. The decision to extend a 5-year offer of employment was predicated on a formal superintendent's evaluation that we felt demonstrated his abilities and fitness to lead. It was also felt that a 5-year contract would bring stability to the district and that it was in the district's best interest to hire Mr. Schedule for a 5-year term. We remain convinced that honoring our contract with Mr. Schedule is in the district's best interest."
Can you say who wrote the letter?
It was comprised by myself.
Thank you. Jess?
So I have, this is my gut feelings. I am completely in support of John as our superintendent. I have the same gut feeling that I had as a Heart Committee member when the people on that committee immediately said, let's send letters to all the people in charge. And my reaction to that was, I'm concerned about the fragility of where we are in our district and relationships that we have on all levels. Relationships with DESE, relationships with the people in our community, the relationships that we have with each other. So I feel a little nervous about being brazen in sending a letter ahead. I certainly am in support of you, and I feel like our commitment to your contract represents that, and I certainly can think about doing this thing, but I'm nervous a little bit about where we are with DESE, and I don't know, does anybody want to talk about what they think about anything like that?
Sharon?
I was nervous also when the Heart Committee did that, so I know where you sit, but I am in full support of Jonathan, and I will sign the letter.
Jim?
I'm not sure I understand the word brazen. We made a decision.
Right.
And we voted unanimously. How are we being brazen?
I guess maybe it's not brazen. It's just reiterating something that we've already done.
Kristen?
My concern is that there have been several committees who have sent letters to the Department of Education, the Commissioner, and a variety of other individuals that express concern. And we as a committee who made this vote unanimously have yet to communicate our support of Jonathan formally on a document to ensure that they are hearing our message as well.
David?
I had a several-month excused absence. Had I been here, you can be sure that this would not have been a unanimous vote, and I might have made some sense. And I'm not saying this because I don't support the superintendent. I do. Nobody's headhunting the superintendent. We're all in with the superintendent. We've made our bet. We're going to sink or swim with John. But it's irresponsible in our condition to sign a 5-year lease, or 5-year contract. We don't know that we're going to even exist in 5 years. And in our recent history, we had a principal dismissed, and we paid 2 principals that year. We can't afford 2 salaries. I can't imagine DESE is going to approve this anyway, but guys, I would think about reconsideration here. And it's nothing, it's no aspersion on John. It's just we can't sign a 5-year commitment when we don't even know how we're going to get through the year after next.
Abby?
Can I ask, sorry, wait for applause. Can I ask if there's been any more conversation with DESE about this issue since our last meeting, or any communication at all?
Should I read the email that we got from DESE?
Sure.
Okay.
Why haven't we heard about all of this, Sue?
Yeah.
You did.
Oh,
I read it.
there was a lot of things we have not heard about that you have, and you have not been disclosing to this committee. And
This is the email you...
it's not attractive.
That's the email that we read at the executive session. Yeah, I'll read it in public. Our issue was, this is from Jay Sullivan, our issue is with the term, 5 years. We met with the commissioner on Monday, and he agreed that the 5-year term was not appropriate. At the meeting, our deputy commissioner said he would reach out to the superintendent and let him know the commissioner's thoughts about the contract. While the commissioner was less concerned with the automatic 5% increase annually, we still feel that the increase should be tied to a successful evaluation. So that's from Jay Sullivan at Department of Ed. Yeah, this is March 14th.
But there hasn't been any other emails since then?
No,
Okay.
nothing, no. Jim, do you want to clarify?
Yeah, so the purpose of that executive session was to talk about whether and how we would negotiate. Now, it turned out the committee wanted to not negotiate and to talk in open session, which is why you're here today. But you still have to vote on whether you actually want to send a letter and what the letter's going to say, because that wasn't the topic of the executive session, so you needed to do it tonight.
And Mike?
John's contract was done prior to the deficit loan given to this district. So the DESI and the commissioner does not have any authority over this. If they did, they would have been giving us an answer by now, and they haven't.
Yep.
Robin?
That sort of relates to what I was questioning. At some point, does this mean that DESI can come in and say, we're going to renegotiate this? Because they can do all kinds of things when they come in. So I guess that's sort of my thinking. Are we going to get to a point where it doesn't really matter what we think anyway?
Because DESI's in control. Kristen?
Have we requested anything in writing from DESI to indicate that, or the commissioner, that we would be required by law to renegotiate this contract?
Well, I requested them to put their position in writing. I don't know that I put that exact question to them.
Yeah, and I think where this was left is that Jonathan's attorney was going to have more conversation with the commissioner, and I don't think it's actually happened. We talked about that a little while ago. That the communication hasn't happened. I mean, I think there's been he's reached out to them, but there hasn't been a discussion or a decision that I'm aware of, at least. So,
David?
The towns do have recourse. A multi-year contract is, even though it might be all inked and executed, is not valid until it has been funded for its first year. So the towns would have within their power the ability to deny the budget, turn it down. 2 towns turned down the Pioneer Assessment and give the message that you got to do differently. The fact that it's signed, the fact that it got done a couple of days before occupation as a result of the borrowing being executed, and maybe we get away with this because of timing. The towns do have recourse, and it would mean no budget and extra town meetings, but the towns do have recourse. This contract is not valid until it has been funded for the first year.
No raise the first year.
Pardon?
Jess?
Doesn't matter, the contract's not valid.
Okay, I'm just.
So just what we need, more bickering.
Yeah.
Jess?
John, I don't know if you're willing to speak to this at all, but do you have a sense of what the climate is?
my opinion on which topic? The contract?
Contract and DESI not sending us a letter. I mean, it's valid. The contract is valid. Is that correct?
I'm not going to answer that question.
Okay.
Because your issue right now is not so much a legal one. I think, as David's indicating, you as a committee have to make decisions about what you think is best for the district. The legal side of this, whether it's legal or not, I left to Jonathan's attorney and the state, because ultimately I represent the school committee.
Okay.
So if there's going to be a conflict on this contract, eventually I have to defend you as a committee. So I'm not weighing in on that particular issue, because I think there's DESI, you're the debtor, they're the lender. So
I get it.
There's the legal side of it, and there's also the financial side of it. And so I'm staying clear of this for the moment. I think you as a committee have to make decisions about what you think is best. DESE needs to make a decision about whether legally they have the right to step in on this particular contract or not. And then they'll probably make other decisions about how they proceed going forward and how they're dealing with the district. And I think that's, something that you were kind of raising, is what does it do for the relationship? But that's not something I can answer for you as your attorney. I think it's something you as a committee have to decide.
Jeannie.
I have a question for Tanya. You just made a statement that any other things that the school committee has voted on, that someone has received a letter from DESE. Why have those approvals from DESE not been passed along to the committee?
Those approvals are just for the financial, those approvals are for the financial office for the financial things that we presented to them. So they come to us to let us know that, yes, you can transfer or your budget is approved. And those are addressed to Jonathan and myself.
But if it refers to the school committee, I would think that we should
have
it forwarded. If it refers
email
to
them.
a school committee vote, that the school committee should have it forwarded to us.
Okay. I will ask that they copy you on them moving forward, and I can get
Thank
you copies of the ones we have.
Moving forward is fine.
And they may actually have your guys' names on them. I will check. Okay. And I don't know if they've been forwarded.
But if it's
via mail or
in
something.
reference to an action of the school committee, then the school committee should be receiving a copy.
So the items
forwarded a copy.
So the items the school committee votes on, transfers, budget, etc., they are then recommended to the commissioner by the overseer, and then the overseer or the commissioner approves them.
There's a letter from DESE saying that they approve, then we should receive a copy of that letter.
Okay.
Sharon.
I'd like to make a motion that we distribute the letter, and those who wish to sign it can sign it, and those who don't want to.
Yeah,
we didn't?
So there's a motion on the floor
Well, let's move it.
to send the letter. Will you read the motion, please, Ann?
From Mike to requested that a letter be sent to DESE addressing the letters of opposition from the towns and other committees and supporting the superintendent.
And it was seconded?
Yeah.
Russell?
Yeah. I would suggest an amendment, which is just that as drafted, because you have a written letter that was.
So Sharon, are you suggesting we call a vote?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or, I don't know, is it's a vote that we're calling as much as we'll just.
Well, a motion was made.
All right.
Vote.
All right. Yes.
Is everybody ready for that? All right. All those in favor of the motion to send the drafted letter to DESE, please raise your hand. All those opposed?
Doesn't mean you can't send it. You can send it. Huh? Yeah.
Can you read the results, Ann?
We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in favor and 6 opposed.
So the motion fails. Sharon?
I'd like to ask our attorney a question. There's nothing preventing those of us who wish to send the letter to go ahead and send it, is there?
You could do it as individual committee members, but not as the committee. So you'd have to make it clear that you're sending a letter on behalf of yourself as a committee member.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to move us on.
Could I just make a comment?
Yes, Karen.
I would like to remind every member of the committee that we had a lengthy and robust discussion before we made that unanimous vote. So I don't understand what's going on here.
I don't either.
I
So,
don't either.
yeah, so, in my opinion, this is about Gil Montague.
Yep.
That's the elephant in the room. So if you guys want to be Turners Falls High School, go ahead and do it.
Okay, I'm going to move us on to number 6,
No.
because we are done with that vote, and we have a lot more to do still. So, number 6 is the Director of Finance Evaluation. So, this came to me a short while ago. Tanya sent me some information letting me know about her contract and about the deadline for her contract and about the evaluation related to her contract. And so it occurred to me that we had not had a separate evaluation for a finance director in the past because we had had a combined superintendent and finance director in the past. So she kindly sent along a document that had been used in the past for her evaluation, and I spoke with Russell about that, and he said, well, that was a municipal role, so we would need something approved by the Department of Ed. So I reached out to Tracy Novick, who did our budget training from Massachusetts Association of School Committees, and she said right on the MASBO website you can find a link to a document that is a DESE evaluation that's been finessed for the business manager finance person. So that's the document that got sent out to you in the mail.
When was that sent?
It was sent with the materials for the meeting.
Yesterday? It's like a huge document to read the
So-
night before the meeting.
So what I want to say is, I didn't see this coming. We had a lengthy process for evaluating our superintendent, and I think we need to pay as careful attention to evaluating our finance person, who's doing a great job, by the way. So, while there is a deadline in the contract, I don't think it would be respectful of Tanya's work to try to meet that actual deadline, because it's April 1st. So I'm wondering what we want to do. Yeah, Karen.
I have a question. I was never fully aware that we had a role in this evaluation.
Neither was I.
But even when the documents came, I wasn't aware. And where's the language that says we do?
It's in Tanya's contract.
Tanya?
So my contract, John
Speak
and
right
I,
into the mic.
John and I were both new when this came about, and not having an active superintendent at the time, the school committee was trying to get someone to fill both of these positions. The language in the current contract is such that the superintendent and school committee evaluate and negotiate. However, it is typical, as Sue can vouch for in the communications, that it is typical for a superintendent to do the evaluations for business managers. The business manager does report to the superintendent. But in the absence of a superintendent last year, at the time both of these positions were hired, that was the way that this contract was written. And I actually originally thought it was April 15th, because the 15th was a date that was in my contract for other reasons. However, I noticed it was April 1st and wanted to make sure that that wasn't missed, because the school committee and superintendent have to give 60-day notice if the contract is going to end. So just trying to follow protocol and make sure that this didn't get through the hoops and we didn't have issues down the road.
Jeannie.
I'm feeling like clearly to do justice to Tanya especially, we're not going to be able to meet that April 1st deadline. April 1st is Monday. That's not saying we won't honor the contract as if it read something else, which probably doesn't make any sense. But I would like to have more of at least a few days to look at the rubric for this, to do it justice.
Russell.
So I think her contract, from what I recall, states that if there's no notice to you by April 1st, then your contract automatically terminates. So I think you need a motion tonight to, it's not just extending the evaluation deadline, you'd have to indicate that well, I think you'd want to have assurance that if that deadline is moved, that you are assured a contract for the coming year. Because otherwise you don't.
It's not an automatic termination.
Yeah, not an automatic.
So you have to waive the automatic termination clause as well as the evaluation deadline is my point.
And would that be part of executive session discussion, I would presume?
I think that would actually be skipped based on what we're talking about here. So you just vote in open session to extend the deadline, let's say, until May 1, and that the provision dealing with automatic termination is waived. If you did that, then you could do the evaluation in April. Then you could do an executive session after that evaluation in the next meeting and negotiate. You can't negotiate now because you haven't even done the evaluation.
Does there have to be a formal addendum to the contract for the extension?
No.
We could do like a short addendum if you'd like. I mean, if it's a public vote, it's going to be binding anyway. But
So you're saying if it's a public vote at this meeting now, that an addendum would not be necessary?
I mean, I could draft one.
Yeah,
It's not going to take long to put it together. So you could have a motion that you're moving the April 1 deadline for purposes of evaluation to May 1, and you're waiving the provision that indicates that the contract's automatically terminated. So that would be just one single vote, and then you could add and have the attorney draft an addendum to that effect.
So moved.
Well, I think Robin wrote it down.
I was writing it down, but that's okay.
I think Ann did too.
I think Ann got it too.
Trying. So the motion would be to move the 4/1 deadline for the purpose of evaluation to May 1 and waive the automatic termination clause.
And have the attorney draft an addendum.
Yeah, for council to create an addendum.
So moved.
I'll second that.
So could I hand you the mic? Oh, sorry. I don't usually get to speak.
Are you okay?
So the motion is to move the April 1st deadline for the purpose of evaluation to May 1 and to waive the automatic termination clause and to have council create an addendum to the contract.
Okay, there's a motion been made and seconded. Discussion? Karen?
Is this okay with Tanya?
I did just ask that.
I don't think I really have a say in the matter because the school committee had a duty to perform this evaluation and it hasn't been done.
Okay, so are we ready to vote? All right, all those in favor of the motion as stated? Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. So we still have to figure out a process for how we want to do this evaluation. We now know a document. Yeah, Russell?
So what I would suggest, based on the contract wording right now, is to do it just like you did with the superintendent. So you'd all take those home, fill them out, get them to somebody to compile them, and then you would have an open session where you talk about the compilation, the composite document, composite evaluation. Then you would vote on that document. When you're done with that, you would have an executive session to talk about the terms of the next contract and negotiate with Tanya, and then I would help you draft the new contract.
Okay. Is the committee comfortable with the central office, Stacy basically collating the document? And when we did the superintendent's evaluation, we had the C&P committee collate the document.
So are you saying C&P would collate? Or?
I just want to decide. I want us to decide. Yeah, Russell?
So the Attorney General's office has an advisory that indicates that they prefer that the administrative assistant compiles and not a committee member.
Okay.
The MASC has a contrary opinion. They usually recommend the chair do it. I typically advise you follow the Attorney General's advice, so
It would be.
Yeah, I think in the past, when we had some struggles, we changed it, but are people comfortable with Stacy collecting our paperwork?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, so let's pick a date at which we would get our paperwork to Stacy. So today is, we're at the end of March, and we want to be able to discuss this in May.
In May?
Well, by May
April.
1st. So we have a meeting, when's our April meeting? The 4th, the 11th?
11th.
Okay, so if we had our paperwork to Stacy by the Monday of the Thursday meeting?
That would be the 8th.
Does that sound good?
That's 2 weeks.
That's almost a full 2 weeks.
All right, so Monday, April 8th, get your paperwork to Stacy at the central office.
Okay, now excuse me, was there more to this rubric than just the 2 pages?
Yeah, it's really long.
Oh, okay.
It's like 20 pages.
All right.
I noticed that.
It's like the DESI, the rest of the DESI evaluation stuff. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to get our documents to Stacy by the 8th, and we will discuss the evaluation at the April school committee meeting.
Works for me.
All right?
Is that okay with you, Tanya?
I don't have a say in the matter, so.
Okay, it's the best we can do right now, I think.
You could
Okay.
be appreciative.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the soonest that you guys can reasonably perform your
Right.
duties and get the data.
Right.
in.
All right. Do we need to vote on that plan or just have that plan? Just have the plan. Okay.
Because
So we aren't going to go into executive session at this meeting, but we will do that at our April meeting.
So, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Could you wait one second? I have one thing I need to say.
I'd like to say something
Yeah.
before we
Jim.
adjourn. Well, I just want to say, listen, I'll use a kind word. I'm very puzzled with this group of people. So are we prepared for another superintendent search? Because if I were John, I would say, these people don't seem to be supporting me, so I've been working hard to do a job, and I'm young, I can look somewhere else. That's what I'd say. So I just needed to put that out.
I guess
Jeannie?
I'm a little puzzled, Jim, where you get the feeling that we're not supporting our superintendent.
Well, it appeared that way.
Signing the letter, it feels like you're not supporting, that's where that comes from.
Well, I don't know.
You're past
Yes.
this,
Okay.
this agenda.
Even with
Yeah,
Desi,
so
All right.
it's-
Sharon, with Desi getting
So-
involved in the first place, we didn't see that coming.
So-
And I don't want to tread on Desi's
So
backside.
the time to discuss that was when we were talking about it. So I'm going to just keep us back on track here. I just need to let the committee know that I need to resign as your chair. It's been a very challenging many months for me, being a full-time worker and trying to carry this load for the committee. And I can't do it. So as of this evening, I am no longer your chair. I'm very sorry about that. I still will show up in my seat and do the work I need to do. But that's my decision. Sharon?
Make a motion that we accept your resignation.
Second.
Do you want me to say all those in favor of accepting
no.
my
The
resignation?
meeting you have.
Russell, could you just clarify this process?
You don't really need to. I mean, she
Yeah.
can do it on her own. But what you will need to do at the next meeting is have an agenda item to choose a chair.
Yeah.
So in the interim, the communication that would typically go to Sue, will it be communicated to
Goes
the
to the
entire group?
Vice
Or
chair, vice chair would operate as a chair in the meantime. Chat chair.
No, we're not.
Now we can do a motion to adjourn.
No, wait, we're gonna.
Second.
Previous
No vote.
motion, the said that there was.
Didn't happen. I'll rescind my motion. Meeting adjourned?
No, we have to vote on that. We didn't vote on the adjournment.
All in favor
Aye.
of adjourning? You want to stay?
No.
We don't want to stay, but we just.
Never a dull
On
moment.
behalf of the public, I would like to thank you for your service.
Yes.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you.